Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. Okay, so welcome to episode 1 of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast. I am super excited to have you joining me here today, as this is a brand new podcast here to help you reconnect with your love of running and learn the running specific nutrition and training strategies that you're going to need to become the very best runner you can be. And so for our very first episode today, I wanted to start by talking about one of the most common nutrition mistakes that I see runners making when it comes to weight loss. And the reason that I wanted to start on this topic as the very first episode of Fuel, Run, Recover is because there are so many runners who get into this sport who pick up running and decide to become a runner, train for their first race, with a goal of losing weight. And, we can discuss and sort of debate the pros and cons about that, sort of in another conversation or at another time. But the reality is that a lot of people see running as sort of a fast track way to get the number on the scale to go down. Now, the problem is that, there's a lot of mistakes that we can make along the way. And while it seems like it's a really simple, effective strategy, most runners, or at least many runners, ultimately wind up frustrated when they go down this path. And so if you're listening to this today as someone who did take up running with a goal of weight loss, or maybe you're someone who has been a runner for a long time, but you've seen, the number on the scale climb over the last little while, and you find that concerning, you find that worrisome, you find that frustrating. And so you're trying to bring back, running as a weight loss tool or sort of lose weight as you embark on a new training program. Pick things back up in terms of your mileage and intensity with weight loss as sort of your ultimate goal, then I want to really sort of break that down today, talk about where we see these common mistakes being made, why they're mistakes, and then most importantly, what you should focus on instead and sort of how we can fix this problem. And so the title of today's episode is Why Eat Less and Move More is Keeping You Stuck. And so that's specifically what I want to break down in today's episode, is why this concept of, weight loss just being a matter of eating less and moving more is not a great strategy for you as a runner. So to start off, what is eat less and move more? Where did this kind of come from? What's the background behind this little soundbite or tidbit that we hear all the time? And you've probably heard this saying before. You've probably heard that weight loss is simple. All you have to do is eat less and move more. And it's a very well-meaning soundbite that has been floating around for literally decades. I can remember being a young kid and hearing that, and there being different programs and weight loss plans and stuff like that really came down to just eating less and moving more. And so this concept boils weight loss down to, at its core, being this simple idea that it's all about calories in, calories out. So if all we do is just monitor and balance and create that deficit or that discrepancy between the calories we eat and the calories we burn, then we will lose weight. And it's very simple. So when we eat fewer calories than we burn, we lose weight. If, on the other hand, we eat more calories than we burn, we gain weight. And this is sort of this concept of calories in, calories out, that then leads to the idea that if we want to lose weight, if our goal is weight loss, all we have to do is eat less and move more. Eat fewer calories, burn more calories. And so if we look at it strictly from a mathematical or scientific lens, yeah, this concept is valid. it really comes down to one of the laws of thermodynamics. And so one of these laws of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. And so what that means is that the energy we eat, which is the calories that we eat in our food, so the energy that we get from food is in the form of calories. The energy we eat, and then the energy we burn, and the energy that we store in our bodies all has to be in balance. We can't just create energy or destroy energy. It's all part of these processes. It's all sort of transformed along the way to different types of energy. And so when we look at this strictly from a scientific or sort of mathematical perspective, yes, time and time again in the research, we see that this works. And so following this advice and thinking about this eat less, move more kind of strategy when it comes to weight loss as a runner seems really easy. Especially because in today's world, we have all kinds of tools. We've got our fitness watches, we have our apps that can track, everything from calories burned during exercise based on heart rate, intensity, etc. And then, oh my gosh, I mean, the leaps and bounds we've made in the last couple of years, especially with our ability to track how much we're eating as well. Everything from apps that have barcode scanners, our ability to access these massive databases of food and, their nutrient breakdowns, to be able to put in how many grams of this or that we eat and get all of this data about how much we're eating. We've got these incredible tools that we certainly did not have access to when I was a kid, so it's come a long way. And it seems like with the advances in technology that we've seen in this area, it should be very simple, and weight loss should be very easy for all of us if that's our goal, because we can just track what we're doing, create a calorie deficit, and boom, we're there. So what is the problem then when it comes to this concept of just eating less and moving more for weight loss for runners? And I want to be very clear about it being, a running specific kind of lens that I'm taking here, because there are certainly some people out there who that piece of advice can probably work just fine. If you're looking at someone who isn't very physically active and is currently eating a lot more calories than their body requires, and they are storing more of those calories because they're not burning them, then yeah, this sort of simple idea of just getting in some exercise minutes, just getting, a little bit more movement within the day or throughout the week, and being mindful of where some of these extra calories might be coming from, this can work fine, completely fine for somebody who is in that kind of life situation and, that's sort of where they're at in terms of their nutrition and their fitness. But today I'm talking to you, the runner, who is already doing possibly very large volumes of exercise. And so where I sort of want to take this conversation is how eating less and moving more isn't great advice for runners, because so many of you out there are already moving a lot and maybe not eating that much, but you're still stuck. And so the first kind of issue that I want to talk about here is the problem that we have with these tools and with the technology that we have at our disposal to track what we're eating and what we're burning. And so the first problem that I see with this eat less, move more concept or mindset is not around the scientific validity of the idea or the scientific validity of the laws of thermodynamics, of course, but it's actually around the fact that even with the technology we have today, even with the quality of the tracking tools that we have, there's actually pretty significant room for error with the tools themselves and sort of how accurate those tools are, but also our ability to put in quality data. And this is really important. The quality of the information that we get from our tracking tools is only as good as the quality of the data that we put into them. And I'll explain what I mean by that, as we sort of break down where people make mistakes or sort of where this can kind of fall apart and why people remain very frustrated when they're trying to just incorporate an eat less, move more mindset into their weight loss plan. But I'll start by sharing, when scientists and researchers are looking into these topics and wanting to, see how does this work, prove its validity, understand how food is sort of turned into energy and how much we eat and burn and how we can kind of play around with some of those factors. What they do is they have people who participate in these research studies actually live and stay in a room, in a chamber, where they are keeping very close control over the calories they're eating. I mean, they know down to the, milligrams probably exactly what that person is consuming for food. And they're also measuring how much oxygen they are breathing in and how much CO2 they're breathing out. So these rooms that these participants are staying in are capturing everything, not only all of their like calorie input, but also their exact output, because they're able to capture all of that air that they're expelling, all the CO2 they're breathing out, and they can monitor that. And that tells us a lot of information about how many calories someone is burning, how much energy somebody is using. So there's no guesswork, and we're keeping people that are doing these research studies in these chambers or sort of in these compartments for whatever specified amount of time. That doesn't really translate that well to the real world. And us using an app to track our food and having a fitness watch and everything like that, because we just can't track things to that significant of a degree. We can't be that detail oriented with our ins and outs to have it be so accurate that we can sort of control or manipulate all of these different factors. So when we translate this idea of energy balance, calories in, calories out, to those of us that are just like living out here with our Garmin watch or our Fitbit and using an app to track our calories, we end up getting a lot more gray area and a lot more guesswork than I think a lot of us are aware of. So it's really difficult to know exactly how many calories we're eating or burning on any given day. Part of the problem is it requires us to be very detail oriented about our exact food intake. This means weighing, measuring, looking at very specific exact portion sizes with everything you're putting into your body, everything you're eating. The banana that you ate for breakfast yesterday may weigh 10, 15, 20 grams more than the banana that you ate for breakfast this morning. And that stuff can matter when we're looking at it, to this sort of degree. And, because runners are often very numbers and data-driven people, this can have a lot of appeal. And there may be a lot of you saying, yeah, big deal, Steph. I don't mind weighing my food. I don't mind tracking what I eat. Like, I don't mind, having to put all this work into the details. And if you're really only eating food that you've prepared at home, you've made yourself, then yeah, it can be relatively simple to track everything you eat. But if you don't, if you are eating away from home, if you are eating in restaurants, if you are, eating at someone else's house where they've prepared the food, it can start to get really tricky. As well, even if we are kind of making everything ourselves and we're preparing everything, from scratch with simple ingredients, at some point in time, you're going to be using packaged foods, whether say it's a can of tomatoes or a can of tuna or, eggs out of a carton or something that has a food label on it that you're going to be relying on for that nutrition information. And these nutrition food labels don't necessarily have to be 100% accurate either. They're allowed to be up to 20% wrong or, kind of have up to a 20% discrepancy, which means that a lot of this is guesswork. A lot of it is, not only us having to guess portion sizes sometimes, ingredients sometimes if we're eating away from home, but also having to understand that even if we are being as detail oriented as we can possibly be with our tracking, it's still not going to be perfect. And so what happens, or what I see in, the real world and sort of in the real life playing out of this, is that because the quality of the tracking information that we can get, or the quality of the information that we can put into our tracking, is a bit wishy-washy, or maybe we're just a little bit inconsistent with it, where we're tracking when we can. We're tracking when we do have control, when we do know what we've eaten, when we did bother to weigh, measure, check, whatever. And then we aren't tracking, or we're just kind of guessing the rest of the time. What we get out of that is maybe like a 50-50 sort of picture with tracking at all, in the sense that some of what we're putting in is incomplete information, or it's just plain a guess. So you then, the runner, are in this really hard place of either needing to completely disregard any kind of socializing, eating in restaurants, ordering in a meal with your family, going to someone else's house and having, appetizers where it's really hard to track exactly what you put on your plate when you were out. You have to either have all of this control with your food prep and with your eating and just be managing everything yourself, or you don't know if your tracking is accurate, or if you're really getting a complete picture. So then once we start to see sort of these questions around, is this information even accurate? Is it even telling me what I need to know about my eating habits? We aren't going to be able to maintain that long term. And the act of tracking, the simple tool, the app that we're using to track, ends up becoming a diet in and of itself, where we are really, quote unquote, good with our eating. We're very careful with our eating. We're very aware of everything we're eating when we're tracking and when it's easy to track. But when it's hard to track, we don't necessarily know what we're eating, we are not at home a lot, we're having restaurant meals, etc., then we aren't tracking and we're sort of just flying by the seat of our pants, sort of eating whatever, whenever. And so our eating changes a lot whether or not we're tracking, and then we don't get a really accurate picture of what's happening. And so this is where the idea that simply having more data, having more information, tracking our calories and tracking our exercise to make sure that we're in a deficit, make sure that we're on the right side of that calories in, calories out equation, can sort of lead us astray. And it can lead us to become very frustrated, and we can be putting in a lot of work. This certainly is taking up our time. It's taking up our mental space. We're maybe planning our meals around what's easy to track. We're eating a lot of the same things over and over and over again because it's easy to track, or we've already put it into our calculator so we can just copy paste. This is where it becomes sort of an unsustainable solution. It can give us some good information and some good data in the short term, but the length of time that we need to track accurately to really get a good sense of the bigger picture of our eating habits is something that a lot of us just don't have time for. The good thing, though, is that we don't need to have time for it. So what I love to tell my clients, what I love to tell the runners that I work with, is that, looking at your calories, looking at your nutrition to that degree, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. There's nothing inherently bad about it. It's certainly a tool that we can use to look at things more closely. But calorie tracking is not a requirement for success. And if anyone tells you that it is a requirement for success, I would disagree with that. I would really, think twice about taking that piece of advice, because there are certainly easier ways that we can still reach our goals. We can improve our performance. We can improve our body composition. We can get all of the things that we want out of our running without having to spend, even if it's 10, 15 minutes every single day putting in all of our food into our app, that doesn't always pay dividends. And so one of the second reasons, or one of the second issues, is kind of building on that. Calorie tracking is not very accurate. To do it accurately takes a lot of work. And we aren't often given parameters around how much of a deficit do we need to see weight loss. And so that sort of brings me to our second issue, which is we create a low energy availability scenario. So I want to share a little scenario that I see more often than not when a runner is trying to just eat less and move more. So they understand that a calorie deficit is the key to weight loss, and they've got the tracking tools to monitor even approximately what they're eating, what they're burning. So you've got your fitness watch, you've got your apps, you're ready to track, you've got everything you need to create this calorie deficit, eat less, move more, weight loss, awesome. The big thing that's missing though, and the big problem that we then can get ourselves into is we're missing a statement on the limit of how big of a calorie deficit do we need? How big does that calorie deficit need to be in order to see the weight loss that we want? And without this key piece of information, a lot of runners are under the impression that that limit does not exist and that, the bigger the deficit, the faster we get results. And we can see that sort of perpetuated with some of the messaging that I've seen from some of these food tracking apps over the years, where they give you this calculation. They give you this, if you eat this amount and you burn this amount in 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, you will weigh this amount. And they sort of break down this calorie deficit into this linear sort of messaging, and this idea that if you just continue and maintain this exact same calorie deficit across the board and you just stick with it, in 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, you're going to be down 5, 10, 15 pounds or whatever they tell you. And so when we, are looking and putting our goals into these programs, putting our goals into these apps, then people get this idea that, oh, okay, well, if I want to lose weight even faster, all I have to do is create a bigger deficit, cut calories, restrict calories even more, and then, I'm going to, lose the weight that I want as fast as I want. And the other thing that comes into play here is that so much of the nutrition advice, the diet programs that are out there, the meal plans that you've probably seen or been encouraged to follow for weight loss are not made for runners. They are not made for people who are burning and needing so many more calories to fuel their activity than, the people who are maybe going for a 30-minute walk each day, or the people who are maybe participating in a 30 or 45 minute circuit training class. When you look at runners, and especially distance runners who are going to be putting in a significant volume and, lots of hours spent running every single week, your energy needs are much, much higher than some of these low-calorie diet plans are equipped for. And so you've got this meal plan, maybe it's 1,200 calories, maybe it's 1,500 calories, and then you're also going to start training for this race. Maybe you're going to start upping your mileage, upping your volume, getting ready for a half marathon or a marathon or something like that. And what we do is we create this massive calorie deficit. We wind up in something called a state of low energy availability. And so we are running as much as we can. We are doing as much activity as we can possibly fit in while trying to eat the smallest amount possible, thinking that that's going to get us to our weight loss goal that much faster. Now, the question is, will you lose weight by doing that? And for many of you listening who have been down this road before, yeah, you might. You maybe will see the scale go down a little bit in the short term, but unfortunately, those results often don't last. And then we get into a very nasty cycle of overeating and undereating and overeating and undereating, because we're trying to diet so hard and create this really big deficit that's difficult to maintain. And then when our appetite kind of comes back, or we have an opportunity to overeat, it's really hard to avoid those cravings. It's really hard to avoid that excessive hunger. And so while you may see some short-term success with that, and you may think that you're well on your way to reaching your goal, it often becomes an even bigger battle that just isn't worth it. And what I'm going to share later in this episode is what I would love to see you do instead, so that you can improve your performance and your energy levels and your enjoyment of running and exercise in a way that still helps you optimize your body composition as a runner. So low energy availability. What is low energy availability? Basically, low energy availability means that there aren't enough calories being consumed. We're not eating enough calories. We're not eating enough energy to support the demands of both the training we're doing and our body's basic functions. So we're not eating enough to fuel the running that we're doing, to fuel the exercise that we're doing, and simultaneously keep all the systems running in the background. Because what a lot of people do not realize is that the vast majority of the calories that we need every single day, the vast majority of the calories that we burn every single day, is actually going just right back into keeping our body running, keeping our body systems running, keeping us alive and functioning. This includes things like digestion, our mood, our brain function, our concentration, our sleep quality, our alertness, our memory, as well as helping us build and maintain our muscle mass. So everything from keeping our brain functioning, our heart beating, our lungs inflating and deflating, all the blood moving around our body, our ability to digest food, all of these things need energy. And most of the calories that we need in a day goes right back into keeping that system operating. And so if we are then trying to do very large volumes of exercise and we're not eating enough to support both of those things, we start having to cut corners. Our workout quality can really suffer. So we have a hard time maintaining our energy levels during our workouts. We kind of run out of gas, essentially, when we're training. It's very hard for us to hit our paces on our workouts. Like, we just can't get the intensity. So we're running very slow, or we are just getting fatigued. We can't lift as much. We might get 45 minutes into a long run and just like we're walking, we just can't keep going. And also then in our day-to-day, we might find that we're having some digestive issues. You might find yourself with a lot more gas, bloating, constipation, maybe even getting some heartburn, some nausea. You might find yourself not being able to lift as heavy during your workout. So if you're trying to do some strength training, then you're really struggling to sort of complete that workout, get through that workout. You also might find that your sleep quality is not great. So you can be quite tired all the time, but also then overnight you're waking up throughout the night and you're not able to get kind of that complete restful sleep overnight. You might find that your concentration, your memory, your mood, all of these things are becoming really difficult. You're just not feeling your best. And sometimes that can lead us even further down this path of feeling like, well, I just need to work harder. I just need to put in more effort. I just need to maybe even diet more. It's the sugar. I'm getting these cravings for food because I need to just work harder at cutting out the sugar. I need to, maybe look at dietary restrictions to help with my digestion because now my digestion is becoming a problem. And so we go looking for solutions and we go looking for answers in a lot of the wrong places, when really the issue is that we're just not eating enough to fuel everything that we're trying to do in a day. So rather than just trying to eat less and move more and create this really big calorie deficit, what we want to focus on is eating enough to fuel our training demands, keep our body functioning in that respect, give ourselves enough energy to complete our workouts, get in really good quality workouts, but also eat enough to keep all that background stuff running, allow our body to digest nutrients properly, allow our body to heal and recover after training, allow our body to build muscle mass, get stronger, get fitter, give our brain the energy and the nutrients that it needs to concentrate and focus and remember things and sleep well. When we do that, then that's where we can really unlock our performance potential and reach our full capacity as runners, because we're giving our body the tools and the things that it needs to perform well. So when we're looking at the idea that energy balance and a calorie restriction or calorie deficit is required to see weight loss, is required to, change things like weight or body composition, we want to be extremely careful about not getting stuck in this eat less, move more extreme sort of mindset of trying to move as much as we can, crank up our volume, run all the miles, and then do all the extra cross-training classes and boot camp classes on top of it. And we're training for hours and hours a day, twice a day, stuff like that, while trying to eat as little as we possibly can get away with. That is never a recipe for success. That is never going to get us where we want to go. Now, the third thing that I want to touch on in terms of eating less and moving more, and why that is not great advice for you as a runner, has to do with our genetics and how our genetics can influence everything from our weight, our body composition, and then how we respond to training and different dietary strategies. And this really, my hope in sharing this is to help you understand why what seems to work for other people may not work for you, why what seems to work well for other people, has caused you to have the opposite effect, caused you a lot of, maybe injuries, frustration, stagnant results. Maybe you're seeing a loss of fitness when you try to do certain things that you see other people doing. And for example, some people have certain genetic variants that make it easier for them to lose body fat just as a result of exercise. So imagine if we had 100 people and we put them all on the exact same training program. You and 100 random other people were all selected, and you're all going to follow the exact same training program. Some people are going to see an enhanced body fat loss response just from doing that, more than other people will. And, I can tell you, I know what genetic variants I personally have, and I do not have the genetic variant that makes it easy for me to lose fat just from training. And so that can, cause us to see, this other person that I know, so-and-so, they picked up running and they just, immediately, it was so easy for them to lose weight just from incorporating more running into their life. And when we do that, we're running a lot. Some of us can be running a ton of mileage. We're doing a lot of volume. We're so consistent with our training, but we don't see that result. And we wonder, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that we all have different genetics. And so then on the other hand, some people have certain genes that influence things like their metabolic rate, how many calories they burn throughout the day, their appetite, their eating behaviors, and their body composition in response to different dietary strategies, different eating strategies. And so, my hopes in sharing that is not to discourage you from having goals and trying to reach your goals, but to understand that the roadmap to get there, the way that we get there to reach our goals, is going to look different for everyone, and everyone's going to have a different recipe for success. And so just simply looking at what other people are doing, looking at what other training or eating strategies or techniques other people are implementing, even if they seem to be having success with it, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the best, most effective strategy for you. And on top of it, we all have different food preferences. So if eating what someone else is eating sounds like a lot of pain and suffering, and you don't want to eat that way, you don't want to have to do those things, then the good news is you don't have to. You can carve your own path and find your own solution. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about today is the difference between weight loss and fat loss. This is a really, really important distinction that I want to make, for everyone, especially you as a runner, because some people feel that just getting the number on the scale down, just getting our weight down is sort of the be all end all. And I want to counter that with the idea that focusing on weight and focusing on weight loss is another way that we can stay stuck and we can stay frustrated. So this concept of just eating less and moving more, creating a calorie deficit and focusing too much on that with the goal of just getting that number down on the scale, that is not what's going to enhance our performance as runners. That is not what's going to enhance our fitness, our health, our relationship with food and exercise, or ultimately get us to reach our goal of becoming a stronger, faster runner. What we want to do is we want to focus on strategies that help us build and preserve muscle, build and maintain and keep our muscle mass. Well, yes, sometimes, and not even all the time, but sometimes help us to reduce our body fat percentage, or at least find a optimal, comfortable body fat percentage for us. And again, that specific number, like what percent body fat we are, is going to be different for everyone. A lot of it has to do with genetics. A lot of it has to do with how we respond to different types of training and, whether or not we have certain variants that make it easier or more difficult for us to lose body fat or gain body fat. And so we don't want to be letting the goal of just simply getting our weight down, getting the number on the scale down, to stop us from actually implementing things into our training, things into our eating that are not going to work for us in the long run. So when we're really focused on just getting the number on the scale down, sometimes we end up doing things like getting into low energy availability, like eating less and moving more, and trying to create these really big calorie deficits that ultimately don't help us to become stronger, to become faster, to foster a healthier relationship with food and exercise. And so if instead we shift our focus and we think more about what strategies, whether it's training or nutrition, should I implement to help me optimize my body composition, right? Whatever that looks like for me, but build and maintain muscle, find that sustainable and comfortable body fat percentage for me that will also help me to fuel for my training, fuel in a way that helps my body perform better, build muscle easier, help me have really great quality workouts, recover as best as I possibly can. Those are the things that we really want to dig into as our strategies for success with running, because that will help us prevent injuries, avoid burnout, help us to find the workouts as easy as they can be. I mean, running is always going to be hard. Our workouts are always going to be hard, but we don't need to make them harder than they need to be just by starving ourselves in the process. We can really find a love and enjoyment of running and training and have it not feel like punishment, not feel like something we have to do, but something we get to do if we're fueling properly and if we're really treating our bodies with that kindness and that love and that respect. So at the end of the day, I hope that today you got some valuable insights into why just simply eating less and moving more is keeping you stuck as a runner, and why shifting your mindset, getting out of that mindset, is really the key to your long-term success in this sport. And why we want to focus on other things like performance, like fueling for better quality workouts and fueling for recovery, rather than just thinking about eating as a weight loss tool and trying to eat just for weight loss. And how if we look at body composition rather than weight, and we sort of look at the right markers and right indicators of success, we can actually get way further, way faster, and maybe even enjoy the journey along the way. So that is it for me for today. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode, our very first one on the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I can't wait for everything else that is to come, everything else that I have to share with you as we continue on this podcast journey together. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you followed the show and also shared it with the other runners in your life. We are just getting started here on the Fuel Run Recover podcast, and I would love it if you helped me spread the word about everything that we have to share, and we can help even more runners grow and evolve and adapt these nutrition and training strategies that are specifically going to help them excel with their running. And if you want to learn more about working with me, about the work that I do with runners, I have both one-on-one and group program options for you to choose from. You can learn more about that by visiting www.stephanienatchuk.com. The link will be there in the show notes. And if in between listening to these podcast episodes, you want to check out even more running content, nutrition, training, recovery strategies for runners, I love to share that stuff with you on my Instagram page, and you can find me there at Steph the Runner's Dietitian. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.